Breaking. Conservatives slam CBC with urgent probe over alleged liberal bias. Public trust in crisis. Since the snap federal election of April 28, 2025, which brought Mark Carney to power as the new Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party, Canada's political and media landscapes have entered a period of intense scrutiny and division. Central to this unfolding drama is the long-standing national broadcaster, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, which now finds itself at the heart of an explosive controversy. The Conservative Party, led by Candice Bergen, has issued a forceful call for an urgent probe into CBC's alleged pro-liberal bias, a charge that has thrown the credibility of the public broadcaster into question and ignited fierce debates about journalistic integrity, political influence, and the future of public trust in Canadian institutions. The allegations leveled by the Conservatives stem from a growing belief that CBC's coverage favors the Liberal government under Carney, painting it in a consistently positive light while scrutinizing opposition parties with what critics claim is disproportionate intensity. Conservatives argue that the national broadcaster has abandoned its foundational mandate of impartiality and objectivity, thus undermining the democratic principle that public media must serve all Canadians equally, regardless of political persuasion. This perception, they say, threatens the very fabric of democracy by eroding public confidence in the media's role as an unbiased watchdog of government power. Candice Bergen has been outspoken on this issue, framing the situation as an urgent matter that demands swift action. In media appearances and parliamentary sessions, she has emphasized that CBC, as a taxpayer-funded institution, must be held to the highest standards of fairness and transparency. Bergen has called for a comprehensive parliamentary inquiry to investigate the broadcaster's editorial practices, funding mechanisms, and possible political influences. She warns that without a transparent and rigorous probe, the Canadian public's trust in both the CBC and democratic governance itself could face irreversible damage. These concerns resonate with a significant portion of the Canadian populace. Recent public opinion polls reveal a marked decline in trust toward the CBC, with many viewers expressing frustration over what they perceive as editorial bias. For a broadcaster supported by public funds, the expectation is clear: to provide balanced reporting that represents the full spectrum of political viewpoints. Critics argue that failing to do so not only alienates millions of Canadians, but also deepens partisan divides, hindering constructive national dialogue. However, defenders of the CBC have pushed back against these accusations, describing them as politically motivated attempts to discredit an independent press. CBC executives and journalists stress the broadcaster's long history of editorial independence and adherence to strict internal guidelines designed to ensure impartiality. They point out that reporting in today's highly polarized political environment will inevitably attract criticism from all sides, making accusations of bias an almost unavoidable byproduct of covering contentious issues. According to CBC representatives, ongoing efforts to uphold transparency and accountability reflect a commitment to serve Canadians without political interference. Prime Minister Mark Carney himself has taken a measured approach to the controversy. While refraining from commenting directly on the probe calls, he has reaffirmed the essential role of a free press in a democratic society. His government has publicly stated its respect for CBC's editorial independence and supports any investigations conducted with impartiality and without undue political pressure. This position attempts to balance the need for accountability with a commitment to protecting a public institution that many Canadians view as a vital source of information. Voices from other political parties add nuance to the debate. The New Democratic Party, NDP, led by Jagmeet Singh, acknowledges the importance of unbiased media coverage but cautions against turning the issue into a partisan weapon. Singh stresses that the focus should be on strengthening journalistic standards and enhancing transparency rather than fueling political divides. This perspective reflects a broader desire across the political spectrum to maintain democratic norms while addressing legitimate concerns about media fairness. The timing of this controversy is particularly significant. Carney's government has embarked on ambitious policy initiatives involving climate action, economic reform, and social welfare expansion. How CBC reports on these policies profoundly influences public understanding and voter attitudes. Any questions about the broadcaster's impartiality risk casting a shadow over political discourse, potentially undermining the democratic process and the electorate's ability to make informed decisions. For many Canadians, this situation highlights broader anxieties about the health of democracy in an era dominated by information overload and polarized media. The national broadcaster, as a publicly funded entity, carries the heavy responsibility of being a trusted source amid competing narratives. When public confidence in CBC wanes, the consequences ripple through society, threatening civic engagement and the social cohesion that underpins Canadian democracy. The proposed parliamentary inquiry will examine key aspects of CBC's operations, including editorial decision-making, complaint handling procedures, and funding structures. It aims to determine whether systematic bias exists and what reforms might be necessary to preserve the broadcaster's independence and credibility. The probe promises to be contentious, with high political stakes as both government and opposition jockey for influence over public opinion. As this probe unfolds, Canadians will be watching closely to see how their national broadcaster navigates this storm of scrutiny and political pressure. The ability of CBC to maintain its credibility and independence will be crucial not only for its survival but for the preservation of democratic values in Canada. Meanwhile, the political leadership faces the delicate task of addressing media criticism without undermining freedom of the press or deepening partisan divides. Ultimately, this battle over alleged liberal bias at CBC is not simply a partisan skirmish, but a profound test of Canadian democracy itself. It challenges politicians, journalists, and citizens to engage honestly with difficult questions about fairness, accountability, and the role of public media. How this moment resolves will shape Canada's democratic future and influence how Canadians relate to their institutions for years to come. In this charged atmosphere, the Conservatives' urgent demand for a probe sends a clear message. Public trust is fragile, and media impartiality is vital. The crisis presents both a challenge and an opportunity. With genuine transparency and meaningful reform, there is hope that Canada's national broadcaster can regain its standing as a trusted, impartial voice for all Canadians. The stakes have never been higher, and the nation awaits the outcome with bated breath.